Welcome to the week that was, but we mostly wish it wasn't, for the week ending July 11th, 2025. This is a weekly roundup of the highlights and lowlights of stories about campus anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, as if those are different things. To give you a sense of the scale of the problem, all of the stories we'll talk about today came from just this past week alone. I had about 40 stories to choose from, and I'm just giving you the tip of that iceberg. And of course, it's summer, so that's a slow time. I'm your host, Andrew Pessin. I am a professor, but please don't hate me. I've been documenting and analyzing campus anti-Semitism for a long time now. Check me out at andrewpessin.com. Our sponsor is Amcha Initiative, a nonprofit that documents anti-Semitism on U.S. campuses, maintaining the most comprehensive database of incidents covering over 700 universities and 10,000 incidents, and unfortunately counting. Find out more about them and please support their work at amchainitiative.org. Okay, to the stories. We start at the top, as always, with Harvard University. The Trump administration subpoenaed Harvard this week for files on students linked to the many pro-Hamas rallies that have been held on that campus since October 7th. DHS official, Department of Homeland Security, has testified that the government created its list of names of such students by using the website Canary Mission, whose slogan, if you're unfamiliar with it, is "If you're an anti-Semite, the world ought to know." To those who appreciate Canary Mission, it is doing a wonderful job documenting activity and activists who support Hamas and are anti-Israel and anti-Semitic. To those less a fan of it, they consider it a doxing website, although in my view, it's not doxing when you do something publicly that should be documented. The Trump administration also informed Harvard's accreditation agency this week that Harvard has been found in violent violation of federal laws, thus threatening Harvard's accreditation status. They did the same with Columbia last week. Speaking of, Columbia has finally closed its investigation of Shai Davidai, the well-known Israeli American, maybe just Israeli business professor who has stood up and spoken out against anti-Semitism there. He's been subject to a many months long investigation. They concluded he had done nothing wrong. Not a surprise to those who followed him closely. Nevertheless, now cleared, Professor Davidai has apparently resigned from the university, although Columbia says it's by mutual agreement, so we don't know the full story there. Meanwhile, undisturbed, uninvestigated Columbia computer science professor Tim Payne has been active on social media, putting up posts, including one comparing Tel Aviv beachgoers to Nazis and another mocking Israeli hostages held in Gaza. And if that's not enough, he has a post defending a man wearing a Hamas headband on the subway and advocating jihad. He seems to get along just fine there at Columbia. In Canada, a really terrible story from Canada. Professor Paul Finlayson has been now fired after having been subjected to a 19-month-long suspension and multiple investigations. What was his crime? Posting that Hamas were Nazis and that he stands with Israel. It's a fascinating and horrible case. Professor Finlayson has started a Substack documenting really the injustices against him. Check it out. Freedom to Offend is the name of that, and buy the man a coffee. He's a real hero. And when you look at the post that he posted for which he's gotten in trouble, it just seems to be stating the truth. An MIT building this week was vandalized with bloody "Death to the IDF," which seems to be the slogan du jour. A particular professor was also personally targeted in that vandalism, accused of complicity in genocide. It was a pro-Hamas group that calls themselves DAMPL, for Direct Action Movement for Palestine Liberation, openly proudly declared responsibility for it. At the University of Wisconsin, 4 University of Wisconsin regents had their driveways vandalized with spray paint and had fake blood smeared across their property. Blood on your hands, you are complicit in genocide. Turning now to SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, a couple of incidents this week. The SJP from Bowdoin, which has become famous because that chapter was co-founded by Democratic mayor nominee, New York City mayor nominee, Zohran Mamdani. This week, a couple of weeks ago, they praised a terrorist from Islamic Jihad in a tweet and posted, "Who among you is the next suicide bomber? Who will carry the next explosive belt? Who will have his body parts blown all over? You would think that rhetoric like that, which seems to praise and incentivize horrible terrorist violence, would be against the student behavior code there. Who knows? Temple University SJP this week, their president of the SJP said on a Zoom, if Palestine is liberated, that's a nail to dismantle the United States. It's our job to destroy imperialism, to destroy the United States, and to destroy capitalism. I say when people tell you who they are, believe them. It was a busy week in the lawsuit and legal arena. A new lawsuit was filed, the latest anti-Semitism lawsuit filed against Stanford University, an Israeli scientist who came to Stanford as a postdoctoral fellow. Documents a long series of harassment, including the sabotage of his research and a fake Title IX sexual harassment case against him. So that has just been filed by the Brandeis Center. The trial began this week in a case where the plaintiffs are the American Association of University Professors, which was once a storied and reputable organization, but now has gone full anti-Israel, joining with MESA, the Middle East Studies Association, long anti-Israel, in a lawsuit against the Trump administration about deporting pro-Hamas students. Meanwhile, a big case was settled. Barnard College settled their anti-Semitism lawsuit with a number of conditions that they're agreeing to, including prohibiting the use of face masks. That seems to me a no-brainer. That should have been the first step for many universities. A zero tolerance policy for discrimination against and harassment, including against Israelis. They were going to expand their relationship with the Jewish Theological Seminary, and they agree that their endowment will not be used for political purposes, i.e. the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement. It seems to me that when you look through these conditions, they amount to just agreeing to follow, mostly to following the rules they already had on the books. If the rules had simply been enforced, the last couple of years would have looked a lot different. Probably the most active arena lately has been the K through 12 arena for anti-Semitism, the largest teachers union in the country. The National Education Association Representative Assembly has voted to cut ties with the Anti-Defamation League, meaning they won't use or consult their materials. The ADL is probably the most important job documenting anti-Semitism. So the NEA has declared they're not interested in documenting anti-Semitism, and that's just the tip of the anti-Semitic iceberg there. They also distributed loads of anti-Israel material at the conference, and in general seem far more focused on attacking Israel than on, educating students. The movement at the NEA was largely driven by representatives from Massachusetts Teachers Association. Massachusetts has been a hotspot, very much so, in the K through 12 arena. Just this week, a report was issued documenting that anti-Semitism in Massachusetts K through 12 schools, public schools, is a pervasive and escalating problem. And lest you think it's just Massachusetts, the New York City's teacher union just endorsed anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic Mamdani for mayor. For some reason, they think going anti-Israel is important to the education of children. And lest you think it's just New York City and Massachusetts, Philadelphia schools, a report came out this week documenting the Jewish parents fighting anti-Semitism in Philadelphia schools, expressing their great disappointment that Governor Shapiro's office has not been helpful and has in fact stopped meeting with them. Finally, some naughty professors this week. We're just about out of time. There's never a shortage of those. So I'll just mention not just the Columbia computer science professor I already mentioned, but Portland State University, University of Chicago, and Princeton University had some professors saying some pretty nasty things this past week. Follow me to get those details. And we close with just some off-campus, I have the word shenanigans here, but it's obviously far worse than that. In Australia, a Melbourne synagogue was set on fire while 20 people were inside on Shabbat. They did manage to get out. And then the pro-Hamas protesters set off and stormed and vandalized an Israeli restaurant, chanting "Death to the IDF," which again is the slogan of the week, or maybe 2 weeks at this point. This was the second synagogue torching in Australia just in the past several months, and the third in the last year. That's the news, unfortunately. Tune in next week to see what fresh horrors the next week shall bring. Again, I'm your host, Andrew Pessin at andrewpessin.com, appreciating the fine work of Amcha Initiative at amchainitiative.org and hoping everyone manages to keep it together until next week. So